meeting is being recorded.
All right. Today's session is from looking to landlord. So if that is where you were trying to be, that is where you are. My name is Linnea McDonald. I work for Department of Corrections, and I am one of the reentry administrators. I recently changed positions, so I am actually also over the housing initiative for the state of Ohio Department of Corrections. So we have 3 panelists today. James, is it Ambria? And Maria? All right, awesome. And so what I'm going to do is ask each of you to introduce yourselves, tell a little bit about yourselves, where you're from, and what you do regarding reentry for your respective organizations. James, would you like to start?
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay, beautiful. Well, you know, as you can tell by the hair, I'm of that age where technology sometimes eludes me. Anyhow, I want to welcome everybody. And I don't represent any organizations other than myself. I am now a year and a half out of prison. And I house felons here. I do my best to house felons as I can here in Toledo. I'm also been advocating for, because I'm very worried about the discriminatory practices presented against the 1 in 3 Americans that now have a criminal background history, and working through that. And I've been taking some initiatives since the last year that we spoke, and perhaps it'll be appropriate to talk about that later.
All right, thank you. I'm originally from Toledo. I moved to Columbus for a position, for a regional position before I got moved to this job. So I know all about Toledo and Lucas County.
All right, well, nice. Way to get out.
All right.
Jim.
Ambria, you want to go next?
Absolutely. Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm super excited to be before you today to kind of share my thoughts regarding reentry and some of the things I institute in my company. My name is Ambria Mikolajczyk. I'm in Toledo, Ohio. I own with my husband, Kevin, a full service real estate company. We specialize in ownership, development, construction, as well as property management. We own about 250 units in the Toledo, Ohio area. And so we house a lot of people. And we also do construction for others who might need assistance getting their projects pulled through. So happy to discuss this topic further with you guys. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And Maria, I guess that leaves you.
That leaves me. Welcome, everyone. I am Maria Ford. I am a volunteer administrator for the Central Ohio Restored Citizens Collaborative. And I too have been justice involved. Now, one of the things that the collaborative does, in addition to just connecting with other agencies and people to connect people, is we have begun a system of master leases for people who are hard to house. So we house sex offenders, tier 1, 2, or 3, arsonists, people with murder convictions, but we also house people who just have no support. People who come out of prison and maybe all of their family has passed away, or all of their family has is done with them. You know, maybe they burned bridges. So we help them to get into housing, and we kind of do it backwards. So we help them get into housing, and then we help them to get jobs, and we make sure they have food, and we make sure they have all of the needs that they have, which we'll talk about a little bit later. I am very excited to be here and just to talk about the many aspects and avenues that people have to take and are forced into at times when they are returning from prison. Thanks.
Thank you. And I know I sent you all some questions, but I'm going to digress for a few minutes and we will get to the questions. If the people who are on this session, if you have questions, you can feel free to put it in the chat and we will randomly check for questions. I'm actually monitoring the chat as we go along. So if you think of something so you don't forget it, please feel free to put it in the chat. One of the questions, I have two questions that weren't on the original list. And the first question I will ask is, what do we need to do better in regards to those individuals that are justice involved that may not have a coexisting condition? You know, so it seems that we do have placement for if a person returning that has an alcohol or drug addiction or a mental health addiction. But what about those individuals that don't have a coexisting situation? How do you think that we should begin to tackle that? And I'm asking actually for myself, and just because it's come up a lot since I've been in this new position, what do we do with the people who may not have drug and alcohol, may not have a mental health disorder, but are still justice involved? And whoever wants to start, you can just go ahead and jump in.
So I would love to take that because it even goes beyond that. You're right. There's a lot of help for people to go into sober living or to have mental health resources, but even people who come out who are not on probation or parole.
Absolutely.
They absolutely are standing on their own. And so I think, and without throwing money at it, we do need to recognize that, first of all, we need to stop eliminating certain convictions. We need to stop saying we won't help people who have XYZ, or we won't house people who have XYZ. We won't employ or allow them to be trained. We need to get rid of all of those, stop restricting the restrictions. And then, of course, in Columbus, housing is sparse for anyone. It's no longer affordable. So affordable housing is for the upper middle class. And so we need to create an understanding within people, within neighborhoods, which is something that we try and do. We try and get our master leases in neighborhoods. We believe after somebody has committed a crime and fulfilled their obligation to the state and paid all of their dues, they have every right to citizenship, just like you do, just like anyone who doesn't have a criminal conviction. And I'll tell you, even today, almost over 20 years after my criminal conviction, I work for the state, I work for the governor, I work with city officials. And there are still times where I feel my citizenry is not equal to someone who does not have a criminal conviction. So we need to allow people to be able to exert the rights that they have, to be able to live freely in places, and at the same time to educate our community members that in order to make your neighborhood safe, in order to make your neighborhood strong and viable, we have to support everyone. So someone is going to go back to crime if they can't find a place to live. Someone is going to return to crime if they cannot find a job, if they don't have food. We need to start being more supportive, just in general.
I would like to add something here as well. So as you were talking, Maria, I got to thinking there needs to be a large awareness effort being done in the community. So when you think about, let's just face it, people have biases, people have stereotypes, the list is long. Mm-hmm. And so I think something that's definitely missing and something that we can do better is having organizations and talk to landlords about the challenges before them, right? And to work to debunk those myths and stereotypes and biases, and to really understand a lot of people's plight. Because unfortunately, I think when people think of those who have been convicted of felonies or misdemeanor, that they're just bad people. But at the end of the day, if you really listen to everyone's story, that's not the case. They aren't bad people, right? And so I think we have to do better as a community, just getting the proper education out there. And so people have a better understanding of what it truly means to house people who are reentering.
Mhm.
I totally agree. James, do you want to weigh in?
Well, that's funny because I'm taking all that in, and I owned a real estate brokerage for 25 years. Okay, and I did property management for probably 22 years. And I'm honestly, the biggest thing is, and I don't know where the appropriate part in our, I think there needs to be a case. I think a landlord needs to get clobbered, okay, for discrimination, get a fine of $1 million levied against them. And by the way, that happened in Toledo many years ago in Perrysburg, as a matter of fact, when renters were discriminated against in downtown Perrysburg, and they were awarded $800,000. And I will let you know that case alone reverberated across every landlord, every property management company, every real estate agent. Everybody heard that message loud and clear. I do know that Fair Housing in Toledo is recruiting testers, and I think that once that first case occurs, I think that will be the klaxon to get everybody's attention. Yes, education is important. I learned not too long ago about how a criminal background history is now an extension of fair housing. Okay, so I have studied the fair house, and the Fair Housing Center here in Toledo has a model policy that they encourage landlords to have. The challenge is it still leaves ambiguity, and ambiguity leads, creates fear. So, awareness. I mean, I belong to several huge landlord networking groups. I consult with a couple of the largest property management companies here in Toledo. They're keenly aware of it, but there's just too much ambiguity right now on what can and cannot be done.
Can I add to that? Because I agree. Proving something is difficult. Proving that you've been discriminated for age, it's difficult. Proving that you've been discriminated for race, it's difficult. And so you're right, the ambiguity that's there. Now to add that 1 in 3 people with criminal convictions live among us, and about 70% of those are Black or brown people. And so now you're piling up, and in Columbus, landlords have learned that they can eliminate people simply by requesting that you make 3 times the rent, or requesting that you have, not only is your background clean, but you have a 700 credit score. And so you don't even have to discriminate anymore, because those litmus tests that nobody can pass are creating homelessness.
You have a very
I
good
will
point.
tell you though, I agree. No landlord's going to flat out tell you I'm not renting to you because you're a person of color or because of this, but it's stunning the number of landlords that will flat out tell you I'm not renting to you because of your criminal background check.
Yes.
They will say that, and that right there is, but the problem is even with the Department of Housing and Urban Development's memo that came out, okay, is that the decision-making process amongst that you can choose from, again, leaves a lot of ambiguity. And I don't know that this is the forum for that kind of conversation, but because, people want to play by the rules, but you just need to know what the rules are too. I mean, you're always going to have, there's always barriers to break down for housing. Okay. And there's always going to be biases, and you get past that. You want to try to coax people by education. And then if they don't want to get educated, then you get the baseball bat out. Okay. And that's where the attorneys come and big fines. And all of a sudden, fear of losing your wallet often motivates people to do things to take actions.
So you talked about education, James, and so I'm going to segue into that because that is one of the things that we're looking at as a department, is educating landlords, educating individuals that may own multi-unit housing situations and things like that. What do you all think the education looks like? Is it just educating people on, I think, and Bria said it, that all people who've gone to prison are not bad people. Sometimes they just made a bad decision. And I can tell you, I used to tell my staff, when I worked in the institution, we're all one bad decision away from being in prison, right?
Mhm.
And they used to hate when I say that, but it's the reality. We are all one bad decision away from being in a prison. I mean, we all make decisions every day, all day. That one bad decision can end us up somewhere that we don't want to be. And so what does that education piece look like when we're talking to people who may have never met someone that was incarcerated, or maybe they met someone, didn't even know it, which is a reality, right? What does that education look like to the public when we're rallying for our justice involved men and women who need housing?
I think you have, go ahead. Go ahead.
I think one of the things you do is I think one of the things you could do is we need to educate our renters better to recognize when they're flat out being discriminated and what the corrective action that can be taken, or to fix that situation. And a lot of people, like I just went on a radio show the other day and to talk about this discrimination amongst felons. Okay. And it was stunning to me, the people that told me that, yeah, well, I was told that because of my background check, they wouldn't do it. I said, did you call fair housing? Why? What would they do? Because people don't know.
Fair enough. And Bria?
Yeah, I was going to say providing real world examples. I would say you bring a felon in and they talk to their story specifically. I think you bring someone who has a misdemeanor in and they talk about their story specifically. And then you throw out facts and statistics, right? 1 in 3 Americans have a criminal history, right? I think people would be staggered and floored by that. And then when you throw in, heck, 60 to 70% are brown and black people. Oh my God, wow, right? And then you create an opportunity for them to be properly educated in a way that they've never even thought of before. And then you start to debunk those stereotypes and myths by providing them the accurate information, not just what they assume to be true. And maybe you start, James said he's a part of a bunch of different real estate organizations. Maybe you have a coalition or a team there and legit just start going through all of the landlords and saying, hey, can we come and talk to you for a second? It's going to help your business. Because listen, at the end of the day, landlords need residents and tenants. We depend on residents and tenants. And so if you have a proper knowledge, which then open up an opportunity for you to keep your buildings full, I don't think they wouldn't sign up for it. And so I just think that a proper education has to take place. And people call fair housing all the time and people are afraid. I mean, landlords are terrified of fair housing. To James' point, you can start hitting them in their pockets. And so this can even be an extension of fair housing to say, hey, we know of this group, or we offer this as a part of our programs, this proper education, and just go out. I mean, I know with my company, we have fair housing come in every single year and talk to my maintenance team and talk to my cleaning staff and my property managers to get that education. I think maybe this is a part of that component.
So I'm going to say a couple of things. First thing is, I feel like that's what we're doing. I feel like with a master lease, we on a monthly basis, we call landlords and talk to them, and just, if they're willing to hear us, we talk to them. But we have opened up 5 master leases, and these were at different times. And mainly it was because we knew, and when I say we, Central Ohio Restored Citizens Collaborative, knew that if we weren't willing to dip our foot in the water, no one else would. So we fronted the master lease, and we said, we know this will work. We know people just need opportunity. We know, and we don't have a program. I don't believe in programs because reentry is a journey. And so we go to the landlords and we say, you know what, you're going to get your rent, whether this stays empty all the time or whether it has somebody in it. And your rents are going to be on time. We're going to hold the lease, but we'll be able to sublet to whomever we see fit. We have in one house 5 highest tiered sex offenders. We've done this for almost a year. And these gentlemen are productive, they're workers, they're kind, they're good neighbors. They cut the grass. They make sure their neighbors have, if their neighbor needs their grass cut, if their neighbor needs their trash, taken out. In another house, we have 3 sex offenders who the same thing. These guys pay their rent. Now, we do offer the first month's free for rent. Like I said, if we're not willing to dip our toe in the water, nobody else will. So we offer them the first month's free. And while we're doing that, because a lot of them have literally walked from prison into our home. So while we're doing that, we're also helping them get jobs. So the second month is going to cost you half the rent. By the third month, you're paying the full rent. We've had only one person leave, and that was because he found a place that would rent to him, his own apartment. So that's a success because we helped him get a job. We helped him to get all of his daily needs taken care of. We helped him to get his transportation in order. That's what we want. Those are successes. And until people look at housing and see the people who are in them and say, wow, these guys, we can be their neighbor. Then until I agree with you when you said people have to see it, they absolutely have to see it. This next thing that I'm going to say it quite as kindly as I can, because I believe words matter. And I am not a felon. I committed a felony and I paid for it. So words matter. If I knew someone to step out on their wife, I wouldn't call them an adulterer. I wouldn't walk around and say, oh, that adulterer, or that tax evader, or that rage driver. Well, maybe that, but oh, there goes the wife beater. I think that we need to be careful in how we use our words, which is why we have done a lot of educating in the Columbus area, in teaching people how to refer to people as someone, they're people first. John, who happens to have a criminal conviction, Shane, who has a background. We never come out and call somebody a felon or an ex-convict, and this is just my education piece, because words hurt. They cut very deeply and they do matter.
And before I let you off the hook, Maria, can you explain what master lease is for people who may be on that don't
Oh,
understand?
I'm so sorry. Yes. So we connect with, let's say a landlord has a house that he wants to rent, and he's willing to rent it for maybe it's a 4-bedroom house. He's willing to rent it for $2,000. These are stretchy numbers. And so we will go to him and say, we will rent your house for $2,500. We will hold the master lease. I am the lease, I'm your tenant, but you'll allow me to sublet. And I will, of course, I'm going to vet the people who come into this house. I will make sure that the grass is always mowed, that the house is cleaned, that you don't have any damage to your house. I will assure you of that. And whether or not, if there are 4 people in each, or there is a person in each bedroom renting from us, or if there's only 1 person there, or if there's no people there, you will always get your $2,500 in rent. We will carry the renter's insurance. We will, anything that you expect of us, anything that you would expect of anybody else who would rent from you, you can expect from us. But the only difference is we will sublease those bedrooms out, and then they'll use the house as with common areas, and to people who are coming out of prison. And we're very clear with our landlords. You know, we are renting to people who have come out of prison. We're renting to people who are sex offenders. So sometimes, you know, even if you want to have a master lease with us, if you're not in an area where we can use you, you know, we may have to pass. Although we have some apartments, we have an apartment building where we can rent to people with common convictions, not severe convictions. And so we have that as well. But right now our push is for those people who are hard to, because even if you committed a crime and you spent 20 years in prison and you come out, and let's say it was a rape, and you come out and now you're a tier 2 sex offender, it doesn't matter how old your conviction is, you will be hard pressed to find someone to rent to you.
Yep, and that's a problem.
It is a problem.
Because it's the look back thing. And again, there's ambiguity in fair housing on that. At what point does it start? I mean, it needs to be addressed. And it can be addressed on the state level. We don't have to wait for feds. The state of Ohio can implement housing policy. And, you know, it's, as long as it doesn't interfere with Department of HUD and HUD's regulations, the state can do that. Again, though, it's political will.
I think it goes beyond politics, because I think there's a heart problem involved. And I think until we can give people facts and reasonable education, but until people change their hearts about how they treat people who have been convicted of anything, we're always going to have this problem.
So how do we move the needle though? I mean, we talked about education. Is there anything else we can do? I know that there's some things that we're working on, government wise, but not just focusing on that. What other things can we do besides going to these landlords and or landlord associations? We know that education is a big piece, but what else can we do? What else is there out there besides the education? I know James talked about specifically exposing people, and then Maria, I believe you said it's hard to prove that. So even if we focus on that piece, okay, I've been discriminated against because I've been justice involved. What does that look like? And I ask that because you talked about getting a job and how hard that can be, Maria. And I know I've worked in reentry for years and worked with several men and women, and keeping them motivated just to say, yes, this person said no, but go to the next place and go to the next place. That piece is already hard. How do we deal with the housing piece? They're like already getting told no over here, and now they're being told no over here. How do we keep that momentum going? And what other things can we do education wise? I know that's like twofold, so just jump in and answer whatever part you want.
Well, I know that what we do when we are renting to people, we typically only give them a 6-month lease. And the reason for that is in 6 months, we will have helped them get a job, get all of their needs met, be able to build some rent financial security in their rent. And then at the end of that 6 months, we ask people to go through a financial literacy course. We ask them to go through some character building. We don't require it, but we do ask them, and everyone has done it. And so at the end of 6 months, we feel like now you're ready to go on your own. And that's where, again, we step in and we say, here are some landlords that are willing to rent to you. And we will write a letter of support for you for the next 6 months or for a year, so that we can attest to your character, to your financial ability, to your sustainability, so that now you're ready to live on your own.
I will say too, in Lucas County here, I participated in that First Wednesday. And when I talked on the radio show the other day, it was stunning how many people had never heard about it. We have a thing called First Wednesday, where all of the not-for-profits, government agencies, all come together. And what was amazing is the number of potential employers that come begging for anybody. I mean, you can have 3 ankle monitors on, and there are employers that will consider hiring you. They're saying, this is what we want. This is what we need you to do. The biggest challenge, I think, it was impressive to me, because I'm kind of, I'm a conservative type of guy, and, my needle's moved a little further center. But the deal is that in Lucas County, you can get a job, you got free health care, and there's people willing to help you find housing through these agencies here. And I will tell you, I don't know what it's like in other counties across the state, but this First Wednesday thing, there's no, I believe that all the time, feeling if someone doesn't want to go back to criminal behavior, they don't have to. The support system is now here in Lucas County.
James, can you explain to us what is First Wednesday?
Okay, it's down. It's on the first Wednesday of every month, and I think it's at like 11 o'clock, and they meet at Chamber Council, Council Chambers. Okay.
At Government Center. They're still at Government Center, right?
Yes, they tried moving away for a minute there, but they're back to Government Center there. And I mean, there's voter registration there. There are neighborhood health organizations there to get you free health care. There are people there to help you get your driver's license back. There are people there to help you modify your child support so that you can get on track with that and get your driver's license back. There's, the Owens Community College is there saying, hey, let us help you. There are programs for you just getting out of prison. There's, then there's people like, I'm the only housing provider there, but, and then there are, I can't remember if there's a bank there saying you can open a bank account with us. Because believe it or not, when I got out, and this was stunning to me, the banks that I used to borrow a lot of money from and deposit a lot of money didn't have anything to do with me.
Mm-hmm.
But when I went to Wood Forest Bank at Walmart, they welcomed me with open arms. Well, now you can get a bank account and a debit card, which can be a trick for people. Okay. All this is on that first Wednesday. And and I was telling some people, or actually a mom of someone, and so they're sending their child there to the first Wednesday. And, the one thing is too, is it was interesting that Maria, I think, talked about, quit labels or words cut. And that's true. But I also go to the second, on the opposite thing. Like, I don't know if you guys can see this, but this is the name of my company. Okay.
Cool.
Huh?
Convict Cool.
That is LLC. Right. And the deal is that I'm not ashamed. Okay. I mean, that's my label. It is what it is. And I've talked to other felons about, I mean, it is what it is. And remember, again, 1 out of 3 Americans now, it's stunning how many parents have come up to me about their kids. I didn't have any idea. And I said, look, you don't have to be that way. So, I got off the topic about what was First Wednesday. I'm sorry.
We also
Oh,
have
that's
First
okay. I
Friday.
do.
We have the same thing in Franklin County. It's First Friday. So yeah, great event.
It
Now,
helps.
is that only for people who have previous convictions?
We have opened it up now to anyone who is in need, because we also have Job and Family there who can help with SNAP and Medicaid and the Department of Motor Vehicles. So yeah, we have opened it up. Mhm.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
the one
that's
in
great.
Lewis County is like that as well. And Bree, I worked with them
Okay.
for years before I moved to Columbus. And I will say, agree with James, if you've never gone since you're in Toledo, just to go, because even the first part is just, you know, kind of informational. Then when they break out with the different vendors, you'd be amazed at how many people are actually there. We started out with a small group, and I mean, it grew the 8 or 9 years that I was involved with it. It's
Yeah,
pretty
that's
amazing.
great. That's great. Something else that I want to offer up as a part of this question, I believe we need diverse, affordable housing options. There's a huge need for that because oftentimes when you talk about people re-entering, you just have one type in your head, or there's very limited areas in which they can go and live. And we just need to do a better job of having multiple options for people across multiple geographies, not just concentrated in one area. And so I believe diverse housing, affordable options is a part of this as well.
I totally agree. Go
And I
ahead,
What
Maria.
is
think,
that? What do you mean by diverse housing options?
Oh, I mean, two things. So Maria's talking about they have houses, right? Like standalone houses. That's fine. What about workforce housing as an option being built, right? Or what about full-on apartment complexes that have been restored in a historic building? You know, and then also diverse geographies. Unfortunately, in Lucas County, people who need more assistance, they typically live in one zip code, right? What if they don't want to live in that zip code? What if they do want to live in the suburbs, right? And have different options for public school systems, right? So diverse in geography and diverse in the actual housing type, I think could be beneficial.
I think I agree. I so agree. Uh, you know, if I tell people, Broad Street is one of our main streets. If you drove from West Broad Street to the East Broad Street, you would literally see dozens of houses, apartment buildings, places that are boarded up. And whenever I go to meetings where they're talking about affordable housing, people are always talking about where can we build? How can we build more?
Right.
And I think I know many are caught up in the courts or whatever, but I think if we could get the city to release many of those, we would have a lot of affordable housing, because you're right, they could be fixed up. And I know people who have offered to me, hey, if you just get a fixer upper, I can live there while I'm working on it. But at the same time, I think we need to talk about NIMBYism, that not in my backyard, because again, until we get people to change their hearts and to be able to freely accept it, other people, and it's not about being ashamed, it's about being equal. And so, you know, there comes a point, people say, I just want a level playing field. The playing field is level. Give me some bats and, you know, give me some equipment so I can play. It's just when you have people who are shutting other people out, which happens for more than just criminal convictions. You know, when you have that, there's still a lot of segregation. And until we start breaking those barriers down, we will always have segregation. We'll always have people who are relegated to living in a certain zip code.
Absolutely. This has been an awesome conversation for me. Look, for me, facilitating it and me in my new role as being over housing for ODRC. So James and Ambria and Maria, I'll probably be reaching out to you definitely after this so we can have some more conversations, and I'll probably come visit some of your properties just to kind of see what you're doing. Before I go to the next question, I just want to kind of open it up to see if any of our participants have any questions or anything so far. Anything that they want to ask, feel free to either unmute or type it in the chat. Okay, I don't see anybody.
That good.
They're just answering all the questions. Awesome conversation. So I'll throw something else out there that we've been looking at moving forward. We participated in I think it was a reentry college a couple of weeks ago where I believe Kansas and Washington were speaking about some of the things that they're doing. And I thought it was dynamic. One of the things that they're doing is they're providing education to men and women prior to release on how to be good tenants. And financial literacy and those things that we know are important when you get out, especially if you've been in for 20 years, things look really different. What are your thoughts on having those education pieces prior to release and maybe having some type of certification to show to a prospective landlord saying, you know, that you've taken these courses or, you know, you've done financial literacy so that you could be a responsible citizen? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I can speak about on the federal level, at least where I was at, and it was a complete joke. Okay.
Oh no.
It was. I ended up teaching financial literacy, credit repair, all these things, landlord, you know, your rights, tenant rights, and everything. And I had to do it in like back rooms on risk of getting in trouble because you're not allowed to be a teacher without doing, you know, in prison for anything else like that. They got their rules or anything else like that. But the reentry programs that they had on the federal level, or the providers could care less. Okay. And the information that they were giving was ridiculously stupid, but you know what it did? It allowed them to check a box. Yes, I did that. So I taught this person before they went out, and people were just, I mean, yeah, there was shell shock for sure about to occur, you know, for people going out there. I mean, there was some guys, they didn't even know what a debit card was. Okay. And it was like, oh my gosh. Or, you know, how to, you could, you know, there's things that you could do to repair your credit while in prison, you know. And I helped some guys actually get some reporting findings, and successfully. And all of a sudden their credit reports growing while they're in prison. And these guys have the time and a stamp to do the right thing.
Right.
So if you were going to do a pre-release, if there was a pre-release component, it's got to be for real. And I'll leave it at that. It's got to be for real. And the person presenting it really wants to have to make it successful.
Okay, thank you.
I'm really torn about this CQH that is going to be happening, because again,
you probably want to tell everyone what that is, because everybody won't know what it is.
It's the housing qualification, and so that people can show this certification to a landlord. But I feel like we're doing it backwards in trying to teach people literacy and how to be a good tenant. If a landlord could care less and all he sees is a criminal conviction, then it's not going to make any difference. So I think learning needs to go on the outside first to people who are receiving, and then it needs to be implemented on the inside. If a landlord is going to rent to you, they're going to rent to you, you know, provided you have the money to pay. And yeah, if they're going to allow you to come into their property, they have decided whether they will notwithstanding a criminal conviction, they'll have decided that beforehand. What needs to be taught, and I agree with James, if the classes are not done through some type of certified, credible source, then I'm not sure that it will be worth anyone's time, but he's right. And I think we have probably that same mindset. They will get a check mark, and which unfortunately is what most people are looking for. And, people come to me with a folder full of certificates that they've earned while they've been incarcerated. And I, as gently as I can, say, that's great, but we want to get you a job. And if you let me help you, I'll get you a job that will sustain you. If you want to depend on those certifications, you will see that they mean very little to very few people.
It's hard because I'm here to tell you, I know those guys, and they were very proud of those certificates that they earned over the last 15 or 20 years. But it was taught by, for the most part, taught by inmates for inmates. There's a kid down in Columbus, and I wish I'd have known about First Friday because he needed your help. Here's one thing that where a lot of, and this is where I really think another great, beautiful class action lawsuit could occur. Okay, but I'm not sure how to wield it, and that's with application fees. Okay, but I know one guy who has a criminal background history, not myself, but he spent over $1,000 in application fees in the Columbus area. He has a 700 credit score, and he makes he makes $28 an hour between 40 and 50 hours a week. So there is absolutely zero reason for him not to get a lease. So it only left one. See, he would make a perfect tester, quite frankly. There was only one reason that he was not getting accepted, to the point where I kind of shared with him a property over on Bryce Road that I thought might work for him. But I mean, it's ridiculous. Yeah, those certificates just don't mean anything. And the only other thing is that I hate to keep going back to monetary solutions, but landlords don't get in this business for the goodness of their hearts. They're here to make money, pure and simple. Right. You, me, and other people, we might want to, but the one thing I don't know how the solution is, but if there was any sort of financial incentives, because there's a certain point where people will start to go, like, I'll give you a perfect example. People in Lucas County they would clamor for recipients of, I'm gonna go old school, Section 8. I don't know what the new term is for it now, okay? But the red tape and inspection, the inspection craziness is to the point now that everyone tries to find ways to get around that. So it's a carrot and stick approach, but if there was some kind of financial incentives that would offset biases, I could promise you people would be standing outside of prison handing out applications for rentals.
Okay.
And maybe that's the solution for those CQHs, maybe to offer landlords some type of financial, I agree, some type of financial incentive so that they will at least give it a try.
And here's another thing that I've heard that's going to happen. I'm sorry.
I'm going to let James, hold on, let Ambria finish her thought as well.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to add, obviously, I'm a landlord. I own about 250 units. I'm in the historic space. So I take old buildings, make them whole again, and rent them out. And I do a lot of Section 8 housing. I do reentry, et cetera. From my perspective in doing housing for 15 years, if there was someone who had served prison time, whatever, and they're reentering, and they come to me and say, I need an apartment, I have a job. I don't even check credit score, to be honest with you guys. I don't look at it. I have a job, right? I need a place. Look at the certificate that shows, right, that I went through this program. For me, that will then further tell the story of this person is trustworthy, they have stick-to-itiveness, they work hard, they clearly care, and that would help me in my decision making. I would appreciate something like that. I really would. That would help in that decision making process. And so I know you guys have been through it and experienced it, but I can say that I would appreciate something like that. I really would.
And
So-
I'd like to, let me jump in real quick, Maria. And I hear what you're saying, James, and most of my experience has been with the state system, not as much with the federal system. I visited a couple. I was on federal reentry court for 8 or 9 years when I was in Toledo. The one thing that I will say, and I not just making a plug for DRC, but myself and others have written some curriculum since when I was in my other position, and they are not programs that are led by the men and women who are incarcerated. Although I will tell you, I know some facilitators that we've trained that are incarcerated that do a phenomenal job. And
Right.
so when I was talking about a curriculum, I mean a rigorous curriculum that you would have to put some effort into. Not we're just going to let somebody stand up in front of you, you're going to sign a paper and that's it, because I don't believe in that. I came from the unit management side, so I believe in programming and I believe in the fidelity of programming. And so when I said that, I said it meaning that we're going to build a curriculum. We're going to talk to the landlords. We're going to talk to the public. We're going to talk to people like James and Maria and say, you know what? If you were going to build a curriculum to help people be good tenants and good stewards over their money, what does that look like? It may not even come from me because I like to go shopping and spend money and I should probably be saving it, right? And so we'd ask people and build that curriculum so that it's a strong curriculum. We may even partner with Sinclair College or something like that, and so that maybe it will be a stepping stone to another curriculum, to a certification when they get out. So I believe in programming, but I believe in meaningful programming. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there. When I talk about that, I mean getting down to the nitty-gritty and really building a curriculum that can go statewide, because everything that I've done is statewide. And so that we know that it's the same in all of our institutions and everyone is receiving the same message. So I just wanted to put that out there. Go ahead, Maria.
When I was talking about it too, about the reentry financial part, it wasn't being taught by the inmates when I said it was a joke.
Okay, fair enough.
It was just, I mean, I kept asking questions and it was just like, at that point, I just said it was over with. But yeah, neither here nor there. There are more productive things to talk about on our time.
So my question is going to Ambria, if I'm allowed to ask questions.
Absolutely.
Because she is a landlord. What do you base your decisions on? Because you said, do you get to know the person? Do you interview the person? Do you talk to family? What do you do?
Yeah, so it's really twofold. We have a program and a database that is checking eviction history, credit history, employment, and also criminal background. And so the system then at that point spits out either this is a do not accept, a low receive, or you pass with glaring marks. Like that system does an initial review. From there, we then look at the person in its totality, right? Why did the system deny this person or why did they approve them? And we take it a step further. And so if it comes back and say, okay, their credit score was too low, but they hit everything else, that's still a resident that I'm renting to. Say, for instance, it comes back and it says, okay, they've got significant criminal history or something like that. Then I'll pull up that criminal history and I'll look to see what it was exactly, how long ago it was. I'll have a conversation with the person about it. Hey, can you tell me more? I saw that this came up. Can you explain it to me? And if people can clearly articulate what happened, or, I can understand and empathize and sympathize. I've got a ton of people who are, I know you don't like these words, but felons and misdemeanors, because it just is what it is. And my family and they need housing too. And so I just look at the person in its totality. It's never really a hard no for me. unless I'm, doing some background checks and I'm talking to some other landlords and they've done some terrible things. Now that's a different situation, but no, I really do a deep review in total.
So you can actually override the system after it's spewed somebody out as a no.
Yeah, for sure. And I've trained my staff to, hey, take this further. Because sometimes I found that the system will deny some person and there's no reason a person should be denied. Right. Or the flip side, someone's approved and you're like, oh no, they are currently, being evicted because they owe this landlord a whole year's worth of rent or whatever, so we always do our own checks regardless of what the system says. It's just kind of a mechanism there that does make it easy because it's able to capture all of the United States versus my initial checks. I'm only able to see what happens in the city or the county. And so this allows me to see everything. So that's why I use it. But no, I drill down a lot further.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
I have a follow-up question to that because you mentioned you train your staff. And so how do you train your staff to be both empathetic and to dig deeper? Because I think that that's an important thing. I think that's missing even with employers. And so since you said it, I was like, okay, let's get into that. What does that look like?
So first off, I have a meeting with them every week. So I'm fairly hands-on. And so we go through people who are applying, units that are vacant, all the things. And we talk about it collectively together. Okay, you think this person is a good tenant, tell me why, what showed up, or we're denying this person, can you tell me why too? And so I'm having significant touch points. And then again, I talked about, we do fair housing training once a year. And I sit down all of my staff, maintenance, cleaning, property management, compliance, and we sit in that room and we learn from fair housing on what they're seeing, tracking trends, make sure that we aren't committing or violating any laws, and stay on top of things. And so, yeah, the yearly fair housing, we do OFA trainings as well through Ohio Housing Finance Agency. That's the entity that gives out affordable tax credits throughout the state of Ohio. And so they have trainings. Actually, 3 of my staff just did a compliance OFA training this week, which goes through things like that. And so they're being trained. I thoroughly believe in education over and over and over again.
Awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I want to open it up to our participants again. I mean, we started a little early, but we're actually at 56 minutes currently. It's been an awesome conversation. Time has flown by. So participants, do you all have any questions? Again, feel free to type anything in the chat. I don't see anything currently. Any questions for our panelists? Okay, well, look, I'll come up with another question then. And we kind of talked about this in the beginning, and now we've had a lot of dialogue over just different things. If you had to pick 2 major things, 2 things that you would say that both the community, DRC, landlords need to collectively work on, or even something that maybe the community needs to work on or DRC needs to work on, what would it be so that we can close this huge gap with our returning citizens and getting affordable housing that's sustainable? That's sustainable, where and I can't remember who mentioned it, but geographically that they can succeed so they're not going back to those same neighborhoods that got them in trouble in the first place. If we had to start bridging that gap, what would be the 2 takeaways to say, this is what we need to work on collectively or individually? I mean, we're better together, but I want to hear what you all have to say. What is it that we really need to hit home on in order to ensure that our men and women are getting sustainable housing moving forward?
Well, I'll chime in with one. Maria's master lease program, I hope I got your name right, okay? I think that's brilliant. Job and Family Services used to hire companies to act as like surrogates for like training to get off of welfare to the workplace, things like that. I think that there are there will be scores of landlords who would be more than happy to do a master lease in all zip codes, especially if they know that they would never have to be responsible for standard maintenance issues that you would have in a rental house. And you're also paid a little bit of a premium. I'm not saying a gargantuan premium, but I, for one, if I was in Columbus and I just heard what I heard from her right now, I'd be saying, what's your email address? Here's all my houses. I don't ever have to worry about collecting rent. I don't ever have to worry about evictions. I don't ever have to worry about painting a room. Are you kidding me? I mean, people would stamp that. That is a brilliant private public business model that I think if you want to, that you could go, you could employ more neighborhood zip code diversity with that. There's a program, it's oversee. So a program that through the funding, and let's face it, there's never enough money, but there's money out there to be had. Okay. It may require allegation and there'll be a territorial turf war over it. But that is, in my opinion, a brilliant business model where you can employ the private sector. And she can say what all she is. She's a business gal. Okay. And provide that housing. I think that's really, that is low hanging fruit in my opinion.
Thank you, James.
Yeah, for sure. James, you took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say it's going to take private and public collaboration.
Mhm.
That's how we combat this. I think no one entity can do it alone. You need city official, government officials, you need organizations, you need Fortune 500 companies. I feel like you need everybody in the room to make this better.
Agreed. Maria?
So I think on DRC side, and I know that they do this in part because I work quite well with them. They have a reentry process, but I think that reentry process should start a year before someone exits. I think they should be matched up with a mentor. I think that they should be, yes, given those classes with the ability to continue on after for some type of certification or associate's degree from a community college. And I also think that they should utilize more people with criminal convictions who are successful to come back and even use them as mentors in some cases, because there's nothing better than somebody who has been through it to walk you through what you're going through. So, because James is right, if you have been in prison for even 10 years, cell phones have changed. Toilets flush on their own. There's all kinds of things that we take for granted. Your whole town is now probably no longer a town. It's now a city status. There's just so many things that you need to be reintroduced to. And I think that each one teach one is the best way to employ that. I think when you get a group, you always lose some. So that's why I think the importance of mentoring. We're doing a program with DYS, and that is the focal point of our programming with them. And then on this side of the fence, I think, yes, private and public sector monies, but I really think we need to start with NIMBYism. This not in my backyard. Oh, I don't mind if they live anywhere. They're just not going to live here. And I've always dreamt, and my dreams are really kind of odd, but for the last 20 years, I've always thought, I'm a mental health professional, by the way. So I love the commercials that talk about depression and that talk about different diagnoses. I would love to see commercials that say, I own my own business, I own my home, I have 4 children, and I have a criminal conviction. I would love to just line people up for people to say, I've worked at my job for 16 years and I've done this and I've done this. Oh yeah, I have a criminal conviction. So that people would see that we are everybody. We're everybody. So that's my soapbox.
I love that. No, I'm a mental health professional too. And I like, you see those commercials all the time, but you're right. I mean, I think that's awesome. 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 Lisa Morgan, do you have a question?
I wanted to pipe in, and Maria made me think of something. And Maria, I don't know if you've seen this. It was many years ago. I think in Franklin County, they put together kind of a marketing effort, but it was the face of reentry, and they had just like mugshots of a whole bunch of different people. Most of them were just people like judges. I want to say the director of ODRC, or somebody.
I remember that. Yes.
Maybe one or two people who had been convicted of crimes in the past. But it was just a really interesting thing to see. I don't know if it's still hanging around on the internet or anything, but the face of reentry, and you really couldn't tell who was who among those faces.
Yeah, I remember that. Mm-hmm. And the tagline was, who has a criminal conviction? Yeah. Yeah.
And the reality is, I think just because you brought up mental health, you can see a lineup of people and not know who has a mental health disorder. Right. And it's the same thing with, being just as involved. Do you look a certain way? No. So absolutely. I'm going to open, we have about 7 minutes left to our actual hour. We're over because we started early, but I don't think anyone is going to complain because the conversation has been awesome. Does any of our participants have any questions? Any questions at all for our panelists or myself? All righty, well, I am going to give each of you just a couple minutes for closing remarks, and then we will conclude. So, Ambria, I'm going to start with you.
I'm trying to think. So from my perspective, again, it's looking at the entire picture, not just taking one facet and drawing a conclusion. And that's, I realize that's not every landlord's perspective, but that's my perspective on it. And it's not just with people. I actually house a lot of people who were homeless as well. And they're facing the same challenges with just trying to get housing. I can say something that's really helped me is partnering with social support services, because I am just a housing provider. That's it. And so I recognize that in order to have healthy residents, they really need to have kind of wraparound services. And so I've partnered with a number of community organizations close to my residents that they can walk to and gain access to those resources. I love, James, that you brought up this first Wednesday. I'll definitely be recommending that people go there as well. But I'm very encouraged by you, Maria, by you, James, by you, Linnea, what you guys are doing in this space, because this is actually how we build our communities up, by having these conversations and by actually stepping up and doing what is required when we recognize the need. And so I'm happy to be amongst you guys and share with this conversation today. And thanks again for having me.
Thank you for being here. Maria.
So it is absolutely a pleasure. And so when I tell people I have a criminal conviction, literally some people jump back. No, wait a minute, but you have a good job, or you have whatever. And I love what Ambria just said, that she's not just taking one facet and drawing a conclusion. And so I think that's what we all need to learn to do, is that and unfortunately, the people in this conversation already know that. But it's taking our message literally to the world, because the conviction rate in the United States is not especially for women now, the conviction rate is growing. So we really need to understand that the worst decision a person made does not define them. And I'm convinced that it's a heart problem, because where your heart is, that's where you give your money to, that's where you give your time to, that's where you give your endorsements to. And I just think as long as we have this not in my backyard mentality, that we will be stuck. But if we're able just to teach one person and to change the mind and the heart of one person, I think we will start making grounds, because then they will teach one. And, unfortunately, unless you have a criminal conviction, like I have a doctorate degree, that too does nothing compared to what I learned by being convicted of a criminal offense. So it's just, this journey has been one that I tell people, in Deuteronomy, it says, it takes 11 days to get from Mount Sinai to Mount Horeb. Why did it take the people of Israel 40 years? That's me. 40-year journey when I could have just cut right through and been good. I think we need to be willing to not just tell our story, but also hear the story of others. And because understanding is so much better than just basic knowledge. And I think once we have understanding of other people, we'll start moving past the worst thing that they've ever done.
Awesome. Thank you. And James, your closing remarks, sir?
Well, I feel like I'm the third batter and the first two have hit home runs. So it's there's a lot of pressure on there. I'm just going to take a different tack. And I know a lot of not-for-profits are also tuned in on this, or will tune in on this later. And I just want to share with you that you really should look at Maria's business model for your own not-for-profit. It's a way that you can even increase your own cash flow to support other programs that you have. You can, inside of 3 months, create zip code diversity by taking that commitment. There's a lot of real estate professionals out there that can guide you into that. There's landlords out there that are approachable for you. And I'm guessing that when you rent it by the bedroom, that you can make room for some profit. And profit is not a dirty word,
right?
Especially because you have to be able to pay for the person that you got to pay for the repairs when something happens. You got to be able to pay for your own staff time. And it gives you the opportunity to expand and this is low hanging fruit for you to be able to go out and you can pull the trigger. We don't have to bring in a Fortune 500 company to underwrite your deal. You can go and do this yourself with a very, 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 very minimal initial cash investment. So this session shows you how to fund your organization and meet the goals that you want to do.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. I want to thank you all again for joining us. This was an awesome session. I hope that you all felt the same way and our participants felt the same way. I know I gained a lot of knowledge. I really enjoyed facilitating it. So again, thank you all. And I will definitely be in touch. You've made a new buddy with me. So I will definitely be in touch with James and Bria not next time I'm in Toledo, because that'll be this weekend, but next time I spend some time there working, I will be reaching out. Maria, I will be reaching out to you to get some more information on what you're doing. And I appreciate each and every one of you. Have a great afternoon. And again, thank you for being our panelists today.
It was fun. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.